the Robert rules are set up so that, we cannot as a 5-4 impose a unanimous vote or a supermajority vote without a supermajority suspending the rules and then redoing them. So
Vote, and we made it that it had to be a 7-2 for hiring a permanent or interim superintendent during our SACS work.
okay. With that, we will move on to item 1.04, consideration of superintendent contract extension. Mr. Ramos?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Motion to be extend the superintendent contract for a period up to 2 years with two triggers. One trigger will being a 90-day trigger initiated upon the hiring of a superintendent. The second trigger will be a 90-day trigger initiated upon the majority vote of the board at the board desire. I think those two triggers may even shorten the recommended 2 years to up to 1 year or less.
Would you repeat that?
Second.
Please repeat that, Mr. Ames.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Mr. Ramos, please repeat.
Second.
The motion is to extend the superintendent contract for a period up to 2 years with two automatic triggers. The first trigger will be a 90-day trigger initiated upon the hiring of a superintendent. The second trigger will be a 90-day trigger initiated upon the majority of the vote as the board vote as it desires.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Do you understand, Ms. Muhammad, you understand the motion now?
I heard what he said, but I have a question.
Okay, so I've got Ms. Harskanane and Ms. Muhammad. Ms. Harskanane?
Yes, the trigger, I think you've used the words trigger, but it would trigger what? What are you triggering then?
The hiring of the new superintendent would trigger the 90-day clause.
Okay, the 90-day.
And then the other 90-day clause will be triggered by the majority of the board vote at the board desires.
Okay, so that wouldn't really, I'm just saying trigger, that would really be a clause in there.
Yes, a clause, yes.
Not a trigger.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Muhammad?
So the 90 days, is that counted in the up to 2 years? Or is that in addition to 2 years?
No, that's counted in the 2 years.
One said no, you said
Who?
it is. You said
I didn't say no. I said, it is, I'm sorry. I was saying it is not counted in the 2 years. I mean, the trigger and the 2 years are different. So it'll be up to 2 years. The 90-day triggers would be if we hired a permanent superintendent, or had a 5-4 vote, then the contract would terminate within 90 days of that trigger being met. So that's within the 2 years. It's not on top of the 2
the
years.
90 days would count within that trigger being met?
From the date the trigger was met, there'd be 90 days. The contract would become a 90-day contract from that point forward.
That's 90 days. From the day that a decision is made.
Correct.
About a new, permanent superintendent.
Correct.
And 90 days if there is a superintendent and we need the superintendent current to continue through the transition period, or what is the 90 days, the other 90 days?
One is an automatic trigger upon the hiring of a superintendent, and one is a trigger based on board decision, 5-4 board decision. So if we hire a permanent superintendent tomorrow, then the contract will become a minimum 3-month contract from there, unless for some reason we needed a longer contract. From July 1st, excuse me, yes. From July 1st.
So this is from July 1st, everything you're talking about?
That's correct, yes.
2 years. When we say up to 2 years, are we counting the 6 months that's left now? He has 6 months left in a contract now. So we're talking those 6 months in addition to another 2 years.
Correct.
In addition to 90 days.
There's no additional 90 days, just an additional
Okay,
2 years.
so
yeah.
we're talking the existing 6 months. We're talking the additional 2 years. So we're talking 2.5 years actually is what we're talking about.
Right. From
2.5 years.
Up to. Up to.
Up to 2.5 years.
from today, right, or from, But the contract itself would be a 2-year contract because the current contract runs through June 30 of 2013.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think a lot of people were misinformed and thought that his contract ended this month. So I'm glad you mentioned the fact that, we have another 6 months, that he has another 6 months through June.
Ms. Muhammad?
Before we vote on this, if we're about to vote, I want to just clarify a couple of things. One, it has never been an issue. A lot has been said. We've gotten a lot of emails. We've gotten a lot of calls. We've gotten just people have had misinformation. It has never been an issue, I don't think, I know it hasn't, as to whether or not this board has wanted to extend Mr. Davis's contract. And I know I can speak for myself, but there is this appearance that there were some of us that didn't want to renew his contract. I'm not going to say somebody maybe did not, but I can tell you the majority of this board has never been there. That has never been an issue. We know that he took on some major challenges when he got here, and he's done a great job in addressing those. He's been a man of his word. He's been a breath of fresh air to work with. He has took on some major challenges. The cheating scandal, the strategic plan, redistricting, some of the things, all of those things that we've heard. And then he's made some mistakes along the way. But again, who doesn't and who will not at some point? I am prepared to support him, and I've said that, and I've said it since day one, and I still stand where I was. I think it's important. I have some problems with 2 years or 2.5 years, and I have problems with that because I made a commitment to the public that I would diligently seek a superintendent. I talked to the superintendent some time ago and conveyed to him my position that I could support a year in addition to the 6 months and with a 90-day out. And that's where I am, and that's where I've been. It's nothing different from anything that I've said before. I'm disappointed that different options were not given to the superintendent and communicated back to us. And that, I think, has been a major problem here. And I just want to clarify that this has turned into something totally different, something saying that as if we were not in support of renewing the superintendent's contract. I think we've always agreed to that. It was just the terms of what would be in that contract. So I give it back to you, but I felt like it was important to clarify that.
Other comments or questions? This 2-year option that Mr. Amos has put on the table certainly gives us the most flexibility, and it allows us to, in earnest, look for a permanent superintendent. And if we are able to find a permanent superintendent that is one we feel is worthy of the Atlanta Public School System, we can hire that superintendent without a long-term financial burden. Not able to find that superintendent, it gives the next board the opportunity to do that work in whatever timetable they want to do that work.
It appears that, we all think that the superintendent has done a great job, but I'd like to know, just for clarification, if anybody has ever asked you, Mr. Superintendent, if you were interested in the permanent position.
No one has asked me that.
Interesting.
Permanent is a difficult term. Of course, the average half-life of a urban school superintendent, I'm led to believe, is 2.9 years on average. If your question is, do I have aspirations of making this a career, the answer is no. To that, I've had enough careers already. Are there things that I believe that remain undone and can be done over the next year or two? And the answer is yes, particularly with Career Academy. A bit polite, and I appreciate that, but I mean, it's, if you decide I need to go, you say go, and you got 90 days to go. I mean, that's what the clause says, yeah. And it only takes 5-4 vote to do that, you know. Right.
All right, so those are the two, so it's up to 2 years with those two, and the search is
Yeah,
going.
whatever is 2 years, a year and a half, 3. We're doing the years based on, and including the time that he has. We're doing the time based on what?
Based on when
What-
his contract expires.
No, season for searches. I want to go back to that again. And I really hate doing this. We've done this 3 or 4 months now with Mr. Davis sitting here, and it just is so, to me, insulting to have to, and it's unfortunate we can't work some of this stuff out and think that we come out with what we pretty much agreed on. But you talked about the typical season for searches, and I want to be clear that we are not blocking in any particular kind of candidate that we would be looking for. And so the typical season for searches, I would assume that you're referring to the traditional superintendents that we have had prior to Mr. Davis. And I hope that that door has been cracked now wide enough that we can consider other folks.
And again, I think that and absolutely, Ms. Muhammad, I think that as we get into the search, we'll talk about what type of superintendent, what type of candidates we want from a superintendent perspective, and it may be that the candidate we identify is not a typical superintendent candidate, and is not on a typical cycle. The 90 days allows us to make those types of decisions, and so we have given ourselves the flexibility to do that. So nothing, I was just saying that the typical season, because that is a traditional season, I think we...
I just have a question. You talk about 1 year and 2 year, and if there's a trigger or a release, right now he has a 90-day in the contract, I believe, but there's a payout. So this does not have a payout, and we're clear on that?
That's correct. All those in favor of calling the question? Calling the question.
Call the question.
Calling the question.
I'm calling the question, yeah.
But
So
I
we
was
have 3
gonna offer
nays, Ms.
another
Muhammad,
motion.
Ms. Meister, and Ms. Johnson.
I was going to offer another motion.
Ms. Muhammad?
Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we extend the superintendent's contract for another year with the both 90-day triggers.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second for a 1-year extension with the 2 90-day triggers we've already discussed.
Explain what the preference for the 1 year as.
We have time, we are locking in there another 90 days in the event that we find someone and he's there to help through that transitioning process. So this is not included in the 1 year. That's another 90 days, that's another 3 months. So we're talking basically 21 months there rather than 24. We're talking 21.
So, Ms. Muhammad, I need to be clear on that because that is not that's not the motion that you made. The motion you made was...
2 90-day triggers.
Right,
On 1 year. 1 year. 90 days in the event that he decides to leave or that we find someone. And then 90 days in the event that we find someone and is toward the end of his contract, or even at the end of his contract, that he would stay on for the 90 days to help transition that person.
Okay, so just so that we're all clear, and I want to make sure that you got your motion together, you're looking for a 1-year contract with a 90-day trigger if we find a permanent superintendent, and an option to extend the contract for an additional 90 days if
Toward the end
toward
of
the
the
end,
contract.
toward the contract. That's your motion? Okay, so that basically is a 12-month motion with a 3-month extension for 15 months.
No automatic trigger of the 3 months. It's just,
3 months, yeah.
it'd be a 3 months that someone could ask for 3 additional months.
So I guess, I've got a couple of concerns with that motion.
Okay.
One I've expressed kind of clearly around my really understand that we need to have more time than just a 12-month. I want to go back through that. You also have not included the 90-day trigger that we had upon, to terminate Mr. Davis if we felt like he was not doing a reasonable job or position, which I think is an important part of the 2-year trigger. Because again, I think that part of what we want to be doing here from a responsible perspective is making
Want to
sure.
do. So in the interest of compromise, when you compromise, you have to compromise and have to, some give, some take.
Even with the year, his contract currently ends June of 13. With a year's extension, it ends June of 14. That's fully 6 months for the upcoming board to do whatever in the world it feels is appropriate.
If we do move forward as some of the colleagues are talking about, we're asking a new board to choose a superintendent in 6 months when it's taken us almost 4 months just to get to where we are now. So that is a real concern of mine, that we will put on the back of a new body coming in the future of our kids in this system when we're struggling.
I certainly could support a 1-year option to extend if you included in it the 90-day trigger for the 5-4 vote to terminate Mr. Davis, which was not in Ms. Muhammad. I'm not sure if you left that intentionally or not, but
No, I don't think she did. I think she was trying to, yeah. She thought,
so Ms. Harskine has made it is that in the motion to amend?
Second.
And I've got a second to amend for a year. So we need to vote on the amendment. Any additional discussion on the amendment?
no, sir.
Yeah, I just want to, I would just like to kind of point out on the option comment that the option wouldn't actually be this the current board's configuration. I mean, the new board will have the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and hire a new superintendent within that 6-month time frame, or
That in your original amendment, in your original motion, it had a trigger of 90 days if there's a 5-4 vote, and it had a trigger of a minimum of 90 days if the new superintendent was seated. In addition to that, you had a 90-day on top of the 1 year if, from a requirement perspective, if the transition time was ended, to stay on for additional 90 days. And Ms. Harskine is simply amending or making a motion to amend, which Mr. English has seconded, the 90 days to 1 year. All those in favor?
All those
In favor
of the amendment?
of the amendment?
That year.
Opposed? I've got 3 opposed, Ms. Muhammad, Ms. Johnson, and Ms. Meister. Motion does pass.
amendment.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
now you
In
vote on it.
voting on the amended motion, that would basically be a 1-year extension with a 1-year option, and it would have 2 triggers in it, a 90-day trigger for the 5-4 vote on any cause, and a minimum of 90-day trigger if a new superintendent is hired in that time.
What is the impact on the system? What is the impact that 1 year versus 2 years? What does this mean for the 47,000 kids of the Atlanta public school system?
The system, primarily, first of all, we have been, as an example, making an effort to recruit a head of HR. That's one incident, and that's one example of we have been stagnant with regard to recruiting talent based on there being instability at the head of our district. We have had the incident specifically related to that position and some other leadership positions because of the uncertainty that has existed with the superintendent's tenure and whether or not the question regarding whether his contract would be extended.
Got a 5-year strategic plan. I mean, realistically, we've got a strategic plan that Mr. Davis has been very instrumental in ensuring that we have for this system. Is he going to be around to see that strategic plan through? And he would have to want to be here. So, I mean, at some point, I mean, I don't know.
I would like to see from a system perspective is allowing Mr. Davis to really get in place the foundation, if you will, for that strategic plan, and for this board and the next board to make a selection of superintendent based not only on qualifications, but also on finding someone who can help continue that strategic plan from a very solid base and solid place that Mr. Davis leaves us.
Trying to do is also make certain we take into consideration that the employees, the present employees, need some time of permanency that they can put their eyes on in the future.
Call the vote on the amended motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails.
Holds our feet to the, I guess the thought is that it holds our feet to the fire, when in fact, I mean, if there's any extension, this current board in this current configuration will not be making that decision anyway. And so I just don't understand how that forces us, either we're going to do it or we're not, right? And so to me, it's not an and or, right? You can do the search and you can extend the contract, but if we looked at this situation in a vacuum and only looked at the search, either we're going to do it or we're not. Either we're serious about it or we're not. Whether or not, I don't think we should hold the superintendent, nor more importantly, I don't think we should hold the school district hostage because of our willingness and or unwillingness to engage in a superintendent search. That I'm struggling.
I don't think anybody who expressed concern had concern about the 90 days versus the 60 days. The concern is about the year versus the 2 years. So to the extent that you're going to change something in an effort to get it done, that would be what you would be changing, not the 60 versus 90. Well, we're starting anyway, right?
Yeah, again, from my perspective, we're starting this early. So we have a motion on the table for an amendment. So let's go ahead and take that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Now we have the original motion with the amendment.
Motion carries.
Excuse me. So we just voted on the amendment, and that passed. We now have a motion for a 2-year extension as amended by Ms. Butler. We now have Mr. Johnson's motion as amended by Ms. Butler-Burks. Any additional questions? Correct. Favor? Any opposed? Motion fails.
I'd like to offer a motion that I hope takes us somewhere between the two. And the two motions that have pretty much been on the table, and that's the 2 years or the 1 year. I'd like to make a motion that we extend the superintendent's contract for a year with an extension up to 6 months, and also with the 90-day clause.
And a 90-day trigger.
And the 90-day trigger, yes. A year, up to 6 months, extension with the 90-day trigger.
And 90-day clause.
And the 90-day clause.
Second.
Yeah. So that's,
So just,
Second.
thank you. So just so that we're clear on what the motion is that you've now seconded, we have a 1-year extension.
no, one year extension.
1 year extension.
Up to
6-month option.
Mm-hmm.
And within those, the 90-day, the trigger and the 90-day clause.
Yes.
So basically, this is 18-month.
18 months, plus the 6 months. It's, 18 months. This is 18 months.
12 months plus 6.
Yes.
Okay. Does everyone understand what that motion is?
Are the 90 days within that time period, not on top of?
190 days is in there.
Can you extend?
Both, I'm sorry, both
Both are
would be in
within
there.
that,
Both
so the
would be
max
in
is
there.
going to be the
Yes,
18 months?
Yes, 6, that's the 6 months, yes.
Figure out what's the difference between 18 and 24 if you have the 90-day out.
It's
I'm just
18,
trying-
6 months. I mean, you got 6 months. You
It's
know,
a
I don't want
compromise.
us
You
to
strike it as
ignore.
you see it as a compromise.
Yeah, I think it's compromising. I mean, at some point, somebody's got to. And I'm hoping, you know, that we are able to do that.
And so, I mean, whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years, whether it's a year and a year with a 1-year option, whether that option is not our option. And so, I mean, we can quote unquote lock them into, we cannot lock the future board into anything anyway. I mean, they can come in tomorrow, especially if you put a 5-4 clause in there, right? They can come in January, whenever, you know, at the first board meeting and say, thank you, Mr. Davis, for your service, and in 90 days, he's gone, right? And so we're not locking them into anything. So I hope that in the spirit of compromise, right, we can arrive somewhere, but I think, you know, the option that we're talking about isn't our option.
And if this new board chooses to do so, they would then have a year to make some decisions and do some work, and I like it for that.
My view, full flexibility to this board and the new board by putting in a 60 or 90-day out clause, which really is fairly unprecedented in kind of contract language for this type of position. So I feel very good about that. It has a motion on the table. All's in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. So is that your concern or is that a concern?
That is a concern for me.
Okay. And so what could we put into this motion that would help alleviate that specific concern short of shortening the time period?
I've offered everything that I'm comfortable with and that I've made, that I'm comfortable with. One of my real concerns, Mr. Chair, and colleagues, a great need at that time, and he came in and he took it on. We asked him to come and get the house cleaned up and, you know, do whatever needed to be done so that we can invite, so we can, somebody else could come in, the plan. So, I don't know, it's a level of discomfort there.
And so your discomfort really is around whether we'll actually do the search or not.
Well, we're going to do this, that's one little piece of it, but there are other pieces too. But more than anything, it's, you know, we've tried to give, and this has been, I thought hopefully it would be a give and take, but, you know, it's just giving and, you know, nobody else not willing to bend.
Okay, we will reconvene the meeting now. Mr. Amos has indicated he has a motion, and Ms. Muhammad has indicated that she has a motion. Hopefully we can get somewhere. Mr. Amos?
I have a motion first. I think I had mine first.
No, he asked me when he sat down that he had a motion he wanted to make. Hopefully get to some compromise here. So, James, you have a motion you want to compromise with?
We're going to take another stab at this. We've been looking at what? How about, I'm willing to make a motion, extend the superintendent contract for 2 years, starting in January the 1st of 2013 with the 2 90-day triggers that we previously talked about.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second.
So it's not a 2-year extension because he's already committed to do this for the next 6 months. I'm just asking. So what are we talking about?
So I guess that does put, at the end of his current contract, that does put us at a 18-month extension with the 2 triggers that we previously talked about.
And isn't that Ms. Muhammad's?
Yeah.
Honey, it just depends on who says it.
No, we voted on, no.
I'm just asking.
It's different. First we had another 6 months.
I promise, I'm just asking.
We voted on a 12-month
With
plus
a
with a 6-month
With a
option,
6 month.
Okay.
which is different. This is a different
This is different.
motion. Up to 18 months.
Right.
This one is different.
This has clarified his motion to say
Okay.
there's an 18-month contract extension
Okay.
beginning on July 1st, 2013.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay. All those in favor of Ms. Amos' motion? Opposed?
Yeah, but I want to ask another question. Can I ask a question before we take the call a vote?
We've already called it. I'm sorry, Ms. Muhammad. All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries.
Well, let me ask you, because I may ask to go back.
We have two opposed, Ms. Meister and Ms. Muhammad opposed. We had Ms. Johnson, Mr. English,
I want
Mr.
clarity.
Mr. Johnson, Ms. Butler-Burks, myself, Ms. Amos.
We have the
and Ms.
count, Mr.
Harshman.
Chair.
I'm counting for myself
I
as
mean,
late. I'm
it
sorry.
sounds like you said the same thing I said from the beginning, but what I wanted to ask, I want to ask the question. If he has 6 months left in this contract.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
superintendent currently has 6 months left in this contract.
Yes.
Is it possible that we could make that, because can we make the January, beginning with January, a 2-year contract? A 2-year rather than, it's basically the same thing, which is what I had offered early on, was the 18 months. But
You would have to go back and renegotiate the terms
Yes.
of his current contract.
Exactly. Could we not
But-
renegotiate the current contract to end in December and have a 2-year contract beginning January of 13 through 15?
If you're asking me if you legally can do it, certainly you can always go back and ask the superintendent to amend his contract. However, he does not have to agree to it because
well,
it is a binding
I'm-
contract.
Yes,
And you'd
but
have to
we-
give him some, you'd have to give him perhaps some consideration for doing that in addition.
Well, it was a conversation that we had earlier. It was a conversation that I had with the in talking about the contract. And it was his suggestion, actually, that this contract could end and he could begin a 2-year contract beginning January. So I wanted to know how can that happen? Can we do that? So I'm assuming we can renegotiate the current one and just begin a new contract starting January through, and it'll just be a straight 2-year contract.
Well, you could, however, the board just took a vote to amend to extend the contract at the end of June 30th for essentially 18 months.
Up to
18 months with those things. So certainly it is possible, however, the board would have to vote to change its vote, and it has already voted, so.
So can I, Mr. Chair, I'm asking about, which way is the best way for him to have the 2-year contract beginning January through 15? Or you think it's better that we continue as is and just finish out the 6 months and then add 18 months onto it? Because, I offered that earlier.
Well, what you offered earlier was a 12-month contract with a 6-month option to extend, which is different than a full 18-month. That's what you offered earlier. In my view, we have offered a contract to Mr. Davis he has a contract now through June 30 that does not have the out clauses, and I think that we should stick with that contract. We voted as a board to extend it 18 months, which gives the exact same time period and gives us all of the parameters that the board wanted. And again, at this hour, I think we have come to a position that's exactly the same.
I beg your patience because I'm trying to get it clear. I'm trying to be clear about it, and I'm trying to get somewhere where I can understand as well, and hopefully we all are on the same page. So that's
okay. Well, I'm happy to help clarify where we are from a board perspective. Yeah, where we are from a board perspective is we'll keep his current contract. Then, beginning on July 1st, He'll have a contract that begins July 1st through December 31st of 2014. In that contract, he will have a 90-day clause.
I know about
If-
that, it's
right,
just the
and a 90-day
two-year piece there.
trigger. And so it'll be a total of 18 months starting July 1st, which from today is approximately 2 years.
So now that I've gotten some clarity on both ends, I would like for the record to reflect my support of Mr. Amos's motion.
Is that something we can do in the,
Well, I just think it can be noted in the record, but it's not the official vote.
the official
because
votes,
we've
Well, can
already
we
taken
take
we've
the
had the
vote?
official,
I have a motion.
I hope it's to adjourn.
I have a motion.
I hope it's to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I will move to adjourn.
All those in favor?